Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Collins, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me yesterday morning about the new policies that you now have related to congressional engagement. For all of my colleagues, this new policy will limit our ability to interact with veterans on a VA campus, as it did when I was denied the ability to host a veteran and provider roundtable at the Seattle VA. I'll note I have done that many times over my over 30 years here in the Senate. My staff was told it was a new policy which had not been put into writing at the time that I got denied, and I just want to reiterate my request, Mr. Secretary, that you share that newly written policy with every single member of Congress.
Hey, Senator, we definitely, as you and I talked yesterday, this had been an unwritten policy for years. It had been it had been applied differently, and I think that I went back and checked it. It had been applied differently, and simply there's no filter that we want you to have it.
I just have to say I've never been denied before.
That's
I don't
fine.
know anybody else who has.
Yep.
This is a new policy, and I think it's important that you have it in writing to every single member, so we all know that. I'd also note that in our conversation yesterday, as well as in your responses to nearly all of the oversight letters I've seen, you are relying on this very broad explanation to everything that, and I quote it, everything you do is to ensure veterans receive the care and services they deserve. I want to take this opportunity, Mr. Secretary, to remind you the people on this dais, both sides, have the same purpose. Many of us have been doing this for decades, and oversight is both constitutionally required and it is critical for all of us to do our jobs. So with that in mind, I would ask you to rescind the memo from your Chief of Staff, which allows him to personally sign off on any proposed or planned engagement with any one of the 535 members of Congress, which really just stonewalls legitimate questions that we have.
Yeah. Senator, that was a memo that's a missing characterization of that memo. It simply was coordinating between OM and our Legislative Affairs Office to make sure that our OM staff, who actually deal with the budget side, which you do, and our Legislative Affairs were on the same page, just as you wouldn't want to in your staff talking to the same group and basically not being on the same page.
I have the letter, and it directly says that every request we have has to go through your Chief of Staff. From our staff who want questions, from any of us who do, everything has to be rerouted up to the top. That is going to take forever. That denies us the ability for us to get the information.
We'll make sure that all legislative inquiries, the stuff that you need, you're getting the oversight. I agree with you. I served in Congress as well. Oversight is important.
So
but also getting you good information is important as well.
I appreciate that. So is that letter no longer in place, no longer applies?
That letter is the one that I'm familiar with, is letters to streamline information so we can get you actually information quicker.
Streamline all the way to the top so our questions are never answered. That's how we all read it.
No, that's not the way the letter is written, so it is. So it's not the way the interpretation is.
I would ask you to go back and look at it because, again, we have oversight responsibility. We all take that very seriously.
I agree with you.
We need those responses. We don't need weeks and months to go through all the way to the top and one guy sitting there deciding whether or not we get information.
Well, there is no weeks and months, and that's the unfortunate part of the VA has been a bureaucracy issue. We're trying to actually streamline it to get you information.
I have other questions. I mean this. I'd like you to go back and look at that letter and remind yourselves we all need the information.
Thank you, Senator.
As you know, fixing EHR and getting it right for our veterans is about patient safety. During your hearing, I expressed my concerns about VA moving forward with deploying the new system at 4 additional new sites when it's still experiencing very serious issues at places in my state, Spokane and Walla Walla. And you said that when it comes to EHR, you were going to, quote, listen to our clinicians and listen to our hospitals. Weeks later, VA announced plans to look at firing a staggering 80,000 employees this year. I want to know, did you ask these VA clinicians and hospitals about how those cuts would affect future EHR deployments?
The issue of employment and EHR deployments are separate. We're not looking, again, I can't emphasize this enough, none of the reorganization that we're looking at deals with frontline workers or frontline employees that deal everything from cleaning a bed to there.
That was not my question.
So yes, we've included it. Dr. Evans, who runs our program, we've incorporated this. He's been working the program for well over a decade.
I have 20 seconds left. I've been very vocal, you know this, about VA's troubling decision not to renew the terms of researchers who are working on absolutely critical projects and clinical trials for our veterans. There are planned trials that have not started There are ongoing trials that have been stopped, and there are trials that have fallen apart due to staff layoffs. Yes or no, would you agree that clinical trials stopping would have an impact on the care for our veterans?
I think clinical trials are very important, and the good thing about it is when we looked at it, there were trials that were coming due that just as they always do. I put a 90-day stop on that so we can examine and make sure that everything's going good.
I understand there's a pause on this new policy. Has a decision been made about what happens when that pause stops?
We're currently in the process of examining that now.
Clinical trials that are out there have no idea. They got to wait 90 days and pray.
At this point in time, like I said, some of those were actually stopped at the end, and what we're actually keeping some in line so that they can continue if need be.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Black.